Hello there, welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life. We're all about turning positive into a plus. We are talking about HIV and fatherhood, and who better to discuss this with me than our good friend Joseph Kibler. You describe yourself as HIV positive and born disabled. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Yes, I'm born disabled and born HIV positive.
And also our good friend Dr. David Malebranche is back. David is the author of Standing on His Shoulders, What I Learned About Race, Life and High Expectations from My Haitian Superman Father. He is also a prominent and well-respected researcher and clinician who has been working in HIV for years. You're also the Senior Director of Global Medical Affairs at Gilead Sciences, and I want to point out that any views or opinions or expressions you have today are yours and yours alone and don't necessarily represent the views and ideas of any entities you represent.
That was really, really good. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. I'm honored to have both of you because we're talking about HIV and fatherhood since Father's Day is like right around the corner. Joseph, first off, congrats on becoming a dad. Your son is two months old, I think you just said. What was that moment like when you got to hold your baby boy for the very first time?
You know, they always say the cliches and you always see it in TV and stuff, but it is literally there is no other way to describe it. It has to be a cliche for that exact reason because I broke down crying. I mean, what was for us was not even just holding him, it was that sound once he came out and was delivered, there's that moment where there's like a bit of silence and then there's that first cry and that first sound of crying and we broke that. We were just a wreck and holding him. There's a photo of me. I just look like such a mess. It still is one of the best experiences in the world that I'll ever have. And holding him every day feels like that comes back.
Yeah, well, and as we said, born HIV positive and disabled, two things I think that the world often sees as limiting. Did you ever imagine this life, love, and a baby could be yours?
No, I had grown up in this feeling that we accept what we're given and we accept that our circumstances are what they are, and I had a mom who struggled with her HIV status and she still does, and about being open and about being happy and proud of her status. And I grew up with this feeling of like whoever accepts me, and it created such a low bar for what I deserved in terms of how that happiness had to show itself, how that relationship had to show itself. The idea of even this like perfect world where I could have the happy marriage, the happy relationship, the family was just completely not in the picture for so many years. Or if I wanted it to be, I kind of suppressed it so that I didn't get disappointed. And I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah, well, we're all glad you're wrong. Dr. David, why do we still hear mostly about HIV and parenting through the lens of pregnancy and women? And why is it important that we talk about it from the male perspective as well?
Yeah, I think from a strict epidemiological standpoint, I mean, it's two-thirds of new cases that we see are among men. So, I mean, the burden is heavily impacting men. And I just want to take a moment actually to give kudos to Joseph for kind of rewriting the narrative. I was listening to him just talk about his mother, and it's amazing what you can do when you're determined. You can think that you're going, stigma can kind of have you believing that you're going to live a certain narrative and this is the way it's going to be. But really, we all have the power to do that. So just kudos to Joseph for doing that. But to your question, I think that fathers often get kind of pushed to the side. And because, I mean, obviously, if you have a couple and it's a woman and a man, or someone with a uterus and a man, you have, they're usually focusing on the person, the female in the relationship, that is, and what her status is, because that's the primary determinant for whether the baby emerges living with HIV or not. So I think the fathers tend to be forgotten about unless it's talked about in a risk capacity and kind of more of a pathological. Oh my God, if they have sex without a condom and try to procreate naturally, is he going to give the virus to her? And, it speaks back to the days, and I'm sure Joseph can attest to this, when we talked about things like sperm washing and procedures that were costly and effective and having to go to fertility clinics to really kind of move this through. And the needle kind of changed, I'd say, about maybe 15 years ago, at least in the clinic I worked with, where we had heterosexual couples that were trying to procreate. And we started to realize that if someone was undetectable, if there was a different couple, one was living with HIV, the other wasn't, we started to realize that if we could keep somebody undetectable, meaning their viral load was less than 200 copies, the risk of their partner contracting HIV was zero. We weren't seeing it. And so we ended up getting to a point where we were saying to the couples, go ahead and try to procreate naturally. And every time that happened, the baby would be HIV negative. And it was a wonderful thing. And then fortunately, the science started to catch up and we started to see those studies kind of play out. So we started to learn it. But I think with regards to fathers and celebrating fathers, fathers often get forgotten in this equation because the narrative is typically a pathological one.
Yeah, and obviously you're talking about U equals U there, undetectable equals untransmittable, a game changer for all of us living with HIV and those who partner with those of us living with HIV. Joseph, when you and your partner decided to start this family, what did that mean to you? You know, to know that even living with HIV, you could bring a healthy child into this world, most importantly, on terms.
It was for me it was breaking a cycle. So, I was born in a situation where pre this talking about U equals U, pre talking openly about even heterosexual relationships in HIV, my father was unfaithful to my mother and he contracted HIV unknowingly and gave it to my mom, who then gave birth to me and my twin brother. And we didn't know that we were HIV positive until we were getting very sick. We were around 11 months by this point, and they had done every test in the book except for HIV because why? My mom was a heterosexual, white, Caucasian, middle class, non-IV drug user. She was not the type that they were looking for at the time. And they basically said, we're going to test these two babies. If they come back HIV positive, that means everyone else is HIV positive. That means my mom is and my dad is. And it finally came out, and my father admitted to cheating and then figured out that they were, that this was the situation. And we were brought initially to the National Institute of Health. We were put on some of the first drug trials for HIV in infants. Um, but my father didn't stay consistent. He wasn't taking care of himself. He decided to pull away. I always say when you're faced with a tough task, you either rise up or you lose yourself. And my mom rose up and my father lost himself. And he got further into that. He got more distant. We didn't have a relationship growing up. I knew that like anytime all I wanted was an apology and just for him to be there. And those were two things he couldn't do. So when it got to the point of I'm in this relationship, I'm in a happy marriage, and I can have a child, I knew that the most important thing I could do in that is just be here and be there for him and go through this process and trust. And I won't lie, even with the science, you get in your head, you worry, what if something, what if I'm the one that's not? I don't want to repeat history. But I'm not doing that because I'm going to be there and I'm always going to be there to answer questions. And we did, we were able to have an HIV negative child. And I am able to be here and I am able to break that cycle and show up for him and not do what my father did. And I say the best thing that my father ever did for me was to teach me how not to be.
Yeah, and David, I see you nodding there, and I read your fantastic book, and I know fatherhood is something that you feel very strongly about, and the male's role in having a role with their child. Hearing Joseph speak about this, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. And I can tell you, what Joseph was saying about one, breaking the cycle, and then two, getting examples of what not to be sometimes. Sometimes that's the biggest inspiration. I know for me, my father, was a huge inspiration in my life. And while our relationship wasn't perfect, he was an immigrant from Haiti who had very traditional values and raised me with an ever moving goalpost of what success looked like. If you got a 98 on the test, why didn't you get a 99? If you got a 99, why didn't you get 100? And I didn't understand that growing up, and actually what a blessing it was, because as a kid you're just wanting your father to come to your baseball, your basketball games, just to love on you and do all these other things. But he came with a very old school immigrant mentality, which was, I'm providing for the family, I'm doing my role. So the rest of the stuff was extra and he didn't feel was really important. And I think when we talk about these kind of things, it's important to kind of break the cycle, because there may be some good things that come out of sons' relationship with their fathers, but then there are things that you can break. And it reminded me, as Joseph was talking, I literally just got back from Las Vegas the other week to witness a graduation of my godson for a very good friend of mine that I've known since college, who did not have a good relationship with his father. And he actually used that because his father was very distant, sometimes toxic interactions between the two of them, never really supported him. And when he had his own child, and this is both him and his wife are HIV negative, but just with the concept of fatherhood, he decided, I'm not going to be like that. And I think there's that fork in the road that people go through, and Joseph was alluding to this, is that people can either continue the cycle of trauma and just keep going and perpetuate that onto the next generation, or you can say, you know what, I'm gonna do things differently. And so my friend in Vegas loved on his child, and his child just graduated from high school and is going to a college in Chicago. And it was just a joy to actually witness that, because I know what he's been through with his own dad, and for him to kind of shift that up and do it. So I think when I'm looking at Joseph now, I'm seeing the opportunity for this beautiful child that's just come into the world, and knowing, like, even though I've just met Joseph, I know he's going to put his all into everything and being a great dad. And so it gives me a lot of inspiration. It's very inspiring to me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And Joseph, I think an HIV diagnosis, for so many people still, they see that as a loss, a loss, not life. If you end up with HIV, that's a loss. You don't get to live your life. So what does becoming a dad mean to you now? And what do you think being a first-time father living with HIV says to the world about being a man living with HIV?
Well, I think it says that one, HIV doesn't have a face, and that anyone can have it, but also anyone can live with it, and anyone can be happy while still being HIV positive. I think it's that I always look at my disability, which is cerebral palsy, and my HIV as these things of a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience and a wealth of heartache and hardship. But I mean, what better person to be a parent than someone who's seen the worst in the world and is still here and can guide somebody through that? I said to a friend recently that I'm like, to go from not being sure if I was ever going to live to getting to guide someone else through their entire life is no better full circle to go through.
I love that. I really love that. From not being someone who thought they were going to live to now get to guide someone through their full life. That's just such a beautiful way to put it. David, what outdated myths do you still hear about HIV and sex and having kids? And why do these have to stop, like, now?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we have time in this program to actually go over all the myths that
do the abridged version. Pick your favorite stupid myths, would you?
Well, I think obviously the biggest one and the one most pertinent to this conversation is that you can't procreate. And so I think with the knowledge of undetectable is untransmittable, is U equals U, and that we don't need these kind of expensive fertility clinic interventions to actually help, that people can live their lives. And this is regardless of the type of couple it is, whether it's a heterosexual couple, whether it's a same gender couple, people can conceive and have children. I actually just spoke on the phone with a young lady who's been living with HIV for a while, but managing it in more of an organic and alternative way, like juices and other things like that. She didn't want to go on medication, but she noticed her viral load was starting to creep up. But now she's with a partner and they're talking about having a child. And so she said, I'm having to think about somebody else, and I want to bring this child into the world. And I realized that it's not just about me taking medications for myself. Like, if I'm going to start a family and do this, this is going to be important to my child that is as of now unborn. So it's exciting to see that kind of translate. And I counseled her as best as I could. And I told her, yes, absolutely. But first and foremost, it's for your own health. So you can take care of yourself first and foremost. And then obviously it's going to be good for both your partner and for the child that you're planning to have right now. But I think the biggest myth has to be that people can't procreate and be happy when they're living with HIV. They think that's the end of their lives. And that's been internalized. Like, even though the rest of the external world may not say that anymore verbally, it's been internalized and ingrained in our psyche so much that we don't need other people telling us that, because that internalization like really drives what we do and what we think we can achieve.
Yeah, well, I mean, you almost alluded to that a moment ago, Joseph, when you said, but you know, I won't lie if in the back of my head, what if I am that one that defies what we've been saying? And that internalized stigma is, I think, the most dangerous form of stigma there is. But you have an HIV negative, healthy little baby boy who is thriving. What message does this send to other men living with HIV who've been told, you can't do this, this wasn't possible, Joseph?
Well, one, it's just another example, and the thing that we need the most, the thing that why science is so important, why medicine is so important, is these repeat examples, these repeat stats and statistics. And every person who can say, I did it, you can do it, there's nothing more important than that. And that it's okay to be open. I mean, I always say, I know that I'm in a privileged situation that I can speak out about it and I feel safe. And I know that that's not always the case for people. They don't, and I don't encourage, if you're not in a position, if you don't feel safe in your environment or your family situation to come out, then you have to protect yourself. But when I tell you there's a freedom in letting it be out there, when there's a weight lifted off of you, I had to hold on to being basically in the closet for HIV till I was 19, and coming out, I won't ever go back. And it's almost to the point now where I'm like, my name is Joseph, I'm HIV positive, because I just want to be able to set that example of what you can do with your life.
Yeah, and David, science aside, what do you think makes fatherhood such a powerful, transformational thing, especially for men living with HIV?
Yeah, I think fatherhood is a beautiful thing on a lot of levels, because it gives you an opportunity, like Joseph was talking about, to actually lead a next generation into this. And I do want to give you kudos, Carl, for actually having us on here to talk about this, because people listen. The science can be the science, but people don't want to hear a lot of statistics most of the time. But if they hear one example, one narrative that says I can do it too, or this is how I did it, that makes more of impression than thousands and thousands of clinical trials that they could see paraded about themselves. What I will say about fatherhood, though, and just in addition, is that there are multiple ways in which someone can become a father: biological father, chosen family. And I will say for myself, like, part of the joys of my life, I don't have any biological children, and not because I wasn't riddled with any internalized stigma about my own HIV status, but I was more like, as I got, the older I got, as I got to like 40, I was like, do I really want to bring a child and raise it at this time? And I'm going to be like the old ass, father slash that everyone sees as a grandpa when they're at the high school graduation. So I was already thinking in that mindset. But what I did instead was really take opportunities, whether it was with other people, other young men, especially young Black men that were in the LGBTQ plus community, or even patients that I had that were younger than me that I was taking care of, that I knew were looking for some kind of father figure. And once that realization kind of kicks in, you start to say, okay, this is what I can help with. And particularly when it comes to HIV, there are a lot of young people out there that are living with HIV. Some of them have blessings of having biological fathers or guardians in the home. Some of them do not. And so they're seeking for some of that guidance. They're seeking for examples. And Joseph, even with him being a biological father now, I can guarantee you there are people that look up to him as also kind of a chosen father or a chosen guardian in that respect. And I think once we realize that our roles are on all those levels, or can be, the potential is limitless as far as what we can do and how we can influence the next generation. We realize the importance. Sometimes it can be a heavy burden to carry. But I think overall, the satisfaction is knowing that just by living your life in an authentic and unapologetic way, you can influence and father anyone you come in contact with.
Amen. And that gives a whole new perspective to people calling me daddy now. So there you go.
Well, that's zaddy. That's zaddy. So that's
zaddy. I can, all these terms I can't keep up with. Let's wrap this up. This is for both of you. Joseph, you can go first. In one word, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Trust.
Like that. David?
Guidance.
I love it. Well, trust and guidance, two important qualities of being a father. Joseph Kibler, Dr. David Malebranche, thank you so much for having this important conversation about fatherhood and HIV as we near Father's Day. Congratulations again, Joseph, and happy Father's Day to you, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Indeed.
Of course, and David, always great to have you too. Hey, thanks for joining us. What did you think of this conversation? Leave a comment below, and remember you can like, follow and share. We are across all your favorite social platforms at Plus Life Media, or go to our website pluslifemedia.com. Until next time, to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.